Hey everybody, AwesomeMattG here, and today is a final thoughts video that's going to be covering Game of Thrones by Telltale Games. This one's probably going to be relatively short because I have very few negative things to say about this game, if any at all. I have everything, in my opinion, was great for the most part. The story seemed very Game of Thronesy, which, I mean, sounds kind of weird when you're like, well, yeah, it takes place in the Game of Thrones universe. Of course, it's got to sound Game of Thronesy. But all in all, through all episodes, I mean, it felt like I was kind of a combination between reading the books and watching the show. Much more watching the show, obviously, but there were a couple of parts that reminded me specifically about the books that have been things that the show didn't cover for one reason or another. I really enjoyed the graphics. They've stepped up the quality since Walking Dead, and that's probably it's mostly intentional that The Walking Dead looks the way it does and Game of Thrones looks the way it does, is they want to use the art to convey some feelings in the game, and it's much better with this detailed art in Game of Thrones to do that, as opposed to the more cel-shaded, cartoony look that The Walking Dead has, because The Walking Dead's much more, it's hard to say which one's darker, but The Walking Dead for me feels way more emotional. So for that, it's a little easier to have a cartoony look to kind of soften the emotional hit that you get when you play those games. Versus this one, it's just more visceral as opposed to emotional, because while you may be attached to a particular character in Game of Thrones, by this point you've kind of, or at least most people have set up the mental block in their mind to not get overly attached to particular characters, because they are not afraid to kill people. That's another thing that I'm sure a lot of people made comments on while I was playing, but I tried to avoid a lot of the comments because I didn't want spoilers for future episodes, because I played a couple of these like way afterwards. But I know I got at least a few comments from people stating, hey, you've read the books and watched the show, right? Why are you reacting a particular way towards a known book or TV character when you know for a fact that that character is fucking crazy? Like, what's his face? Not Reek. God. What is his name? Bolton. Ramsay. I always want to say Roose, but that's his dad. I was like, Ramsay Bolton. He's freaking nuts. And a lot of you were like, why are you treating him a particular way when you know that the character is just crazy? And the reason I did it was because the character I was role-playing at the time either did or did not know the extent of his craziness. Like, shoot, what is the youngest son, not the youngest son's name? The one from the first episode that's killed in the very end. Anyway, him. He has no idea how truly nuts Ramsay is. So that's why he treats him with, or at least I played him to treat him with a certain level of respect and more like fear, like this is somebody that's more influential than I am, as opposed to I can't trust anything this guy says. And the same goes for some of the other characters that interacted with Ramsay. Ramsay's a big factor in that one. That's also why later in the series, I think it's episode 4? No, I'm looking through my... No, it's episode 3. When Tyrion gets caught at the Red Wedding, or the Purple Wedding, sorry. And at the end of the episode, I burned the Ironwood decree that he'd written up for me that was all like, yeah, this is all the good stuff that we're going to do for you guys in your Ironwood. And then he gets caught at the Purple Wedding and sentenced to death for killing the king. And I'm holding the sheet of paper that directly connects me and my family to Tyrion. And regardless of what the paper actually says, nobody's going to take his word seriously now, written or otherwise. So I was all like, it's best to destroy it so that his name is not connected with mine in any additional way. And that's why I did that. There's also a couple of other things that seem to be like a couple of other decisions throughout the game that seem to be me being in the vast minority. Let's see, like me killing the slave master in Marine. I did that primarily because if anybody was going to be to blame for the death of the slave master, I definitely didn't want it to be my friend. And again, I can't remember her name. But I didn't really think that it was going to be that big of a deal, and luckily it didn't turn out to be. But there was a possibility that I could have shot myself in the foot with that decision. I certainly made her pissed off when I did it, but at least she understood. She was more or less just happy that that he was dead in the long run. And then later on, like the one that seems to be the weirdest that I thought was the weirdest is that only 12% decided to side with Gwyn and call off the plan in the last episode, or second to the last episode. It was the final episode 6, the Ice Dragon, but I don't remember whether that was in the final episode that I released or the second to the last one, but it doesn't matter. I thought more people would have sided with Gwyn and called off the plan, but I guess a lot of people were just pissed off at that point, and they were like, forget that guy, I want to murder his face. And I was playing it more from a strategic aspect. You know, it's safer to keep your enemies close, and that was my plan. There was, I'll go ahead and just agree with this and like marry Gwyn eventually, and that'll solidify the two houses together, but then from inside I could bring her father down and take control of the two houses. That was my idea there. Obviously that didn't work out, but the well, my little picture stopped working here that I had. But yeah, I think the majority of my decisions were pretty well either 50-50 or way in the majority. There were only a couple that were like drastically different. Although when I got to the end, considering most of the decisions were 50-50, and then I got to the end of the game and it said that me and only like 28% of people fought with cunning strategy, I would have thought that would have been a little higher. Just because it didn't seem that a lot of my decisions were different, except it was probably some of those decisions that greatly affected that score to put me into that category. And I would be interested in knowing what other categories there are, what decisions determine which category you're put into. I definitely want to go back and replay this again in a drastically different style, because I was playing more strategic, like how can I chess myself into this? And I think next time I want to play a round through the game where I go in that's just extreme violence. That's like at every occasion that I can kill someone for any reason, I'll do it. Like trying to stab Ramsey when he like gives me his own knife and puts it up against his own neck. And there were a couple other areas where I was really nice because I thought it would get me into a better position. And I want to play like a more violent role, and then I want to play like a super passive role where I don't do any violence. I'd also be interested in seeing if there was a way, like what the outcome to the game would be if you basically tried to stay as silent as possible. Like during the decisions where the decisions where you can just stay silent as one of the options, or let the timer run out so that your character doesn't say anything. I know in The Walking Dead, at the train, that led to a specific cutscene that almost nobody ever got, and the developers had to come out and state, yeah, this is a thing. If you just stay silent from here to here, you get this really unique ending. Well, really unique, the end, you've died sequence. But, yeah, I'd be interested in seeing what some of the other ending situations will lead to. So, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there were particular decisions that I made throughout the series that you either don't understand why I did it, or just want to know what I was thinking at the time. I don't want to go over all of them. The only quirk, one of the only down things I have on the game is that it was a little buggy, and I mean that in the sense of there were a couple of situations, and this has happened in all of the Telltale games, and I'm sure it's a problem that is based solely on the sheer randomness of your decisions throughout the series and how the game has to adjust for what you're deciding, like a choose-your-own-adventure book. And I'm sure that's part of why the game gets a little weird in parts, but like characters will just appear off in the distance and then disappear, and I'm sure in some sequence of decision making that character is either supposed to be there or not supposed to be there, or be standing over here versus standing over there, depending on what your decision is going to make come to pass. And I'm sure some of that has to deal with your decision and the game's trying to anticipate what you're going to decide, and either anticipates incorrectly, or perhaps it's loading both options, and then once your decision is made, it unloads the one you didn't choose. I don't know how they have it coded in the background, but there's a few areas where that happens. And it doesn't really affect the game, because most of the time you're so enthralled in the story that you don't really notice it. But like for me, when I'm recording, I'm usually pretty hyper-focused on stuff like that. I'm trying to pay attention to things that would distract the viewer, and with the anticipation of maybe I can detract from that scene and keep the viewer from being distracted, or if it's something weird like my little Steam pop-up thing that I forget to close or whatever, I can go back in editing and put a little black box over that so that it's less likely for the viewer to notice. So maybe I'm just a little hyper-focused on stuff like that, but it's not one of the things that would really burn my bridge, It's not anything anywhere near me saying, I don't want to play a game of theirs again. They have too many weird, character models popping up and disappearing. That's totally not going to affect my desire to play any of their games. And I know a lot of people found this game a little boring, but maybe I'm thinking that's because they weren't into the Game of Thrones universe. That's a possibility. That's like they just announced that they're going to be making a Batman game, and I'm not a huge Batman fan. I'll probably watch somebody else's playthrough of it, but I don't think I'll play it myself. I'll probably play the Marvel one, because I love Marvel characters. But yeah, I found the game extremely enjoyable, and I thought they did an excellent job in keeping the game feeling like mostly like the show. But I was extremely pleased. I liked all the decisions I made. There were a couple of points where my decision was forced because I had very short amount of time. But that's fine. You know, you would have to make that decision at the drop of a hat in real life anyway. So I don't feel like I was cheated out of my decision. I just felt like it was forcing me to make one quicker. So, anyway, let me know if you guys have any questions down below. If you have any comments, feel free. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.